warm welcome to the Global Sports Channel today to Mr. James Owen. How are you, Mr. James Owen Roberts? Are you doing well over there?
I'm very well, thank you. You're the first host to ever use my middle name.
Well, there you go.
So I appreciate that.
I like to be the first at some things in my life. So, now why don't you tell our massive global audience where you're chatting to us from today? Whereabouts are you?
I'm speaking to you from, well, I would like to normally say glorious North Wales, but it's very somber out there. It's pretty much, it's not grey, but it's one of those kind of mornings, we're heading into winter, and you can definitely tell.
I was going to say, when it comes to North Wales and weather this time of the year, I'm very familiar with it, and I can pretty much assure that you've got some grey clouds outside. That's probably the case.
Yep. It's not raining, so that's a change.
Very good. We're going to talk about another country that you and I both have frequented on a number of occasions, and it's also fairly notorious for poor weather, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. I wanted to start off on my shows. I always offer my guests the opportunity to dedicate their show to someone special in their life. So who would you like to dedicate your show to today?
I'd go with my mother.
Your mother, fantastic. And what's your mum's name?
Wendy.
Wendy. Okay, well, shout out to Wendy today, James's great mother. And I hope you sit down and listen to the show with her. Eh? That'd be a nice thing to do, because she wouldn't be expecting to hear her name probably mentioned on the show, right?
Well, not on a global scale, no.
There you go. Okay, well, fantastic. Let's see what Wendy thinks of the show. I'm sure she'll probably find out a few things about her son that she didn't know before. That's one of my goals today, is to bring out some answers that maybe you haven't told anybody else before. So, are you ready to give away some of your secrets?
I doubt she doesn't know anything about me, but we'll give it a crack.
Now, you're a man of many talents. Swimming, rowing, volleyball, Paralympic Games on 2 occasions, and fellow podcaster, also a coach. Is there anything you don't do, James?
Well, I got my hand into the authoring side of things more recently, so it's to answer that question of is anything that I haven't done. Talked on stage to a wide audience, so that's the next challenge for 2021 and beyond. So it's trying to take each, I'll call them hurdles because I won't call it adversity, as they come. So it's been looking at the positives of this 2020 as opposed to other people. In hindsight as 2020 and actually being a positive as, well, if I'd have done something slightly different, as you say, if I said to yes, the year of sport, hindsight's 2020, but it's actually having the gumption to go after something when you want it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when I was doing my research on you, I was looking through your resume and I was thinking, wow, this guy should be doing a TED Talk somewhere in the world and sharing his story on that platform. So, there must be plenty of TED Talks in the UK that you can get yourself onto. That'd be an ambition, wouldn't it?
I've got as you brought it up, I've got a chat with one of the organisations tomorrow as we're recording. As in, this is live, so this is going out today. So I've got to talk with one of them tomorrow. So pretty much, touch wood, because you never got 100% certainty of anything, I'll probably be speaking next month at that event.
Oh, brilliant.
Obviously, you said TED. So TED is obviously the next one above TEDx. So I would never say never. That one's even more challenging to get. A lot of people have been surprised that I haven't talked on the TEDx stage prior to even getting pretty much through the door. It's been more challenging than I ever thought it would be. I maybe have done it for the wrong reasons in the 2 years previous, and that might be why I didn't get it. And it's not been in alignment with who I was or what my message was. And even other coaches or guests have kind of said, well, James, you haven't got one yet. I'm very surprised. It's like, well, so am I. But I think it was, to give you a little bit of backstory to that, I think it was like the next challenge. It was, well, what can I do that's going to be on par with some of the accolades that you mentioned, you know, the two-time Paralympics. If I just said what, to put one in comparison to a TEDx, it was, well, to speak to a large audience. A lot of people got stage fright. A lot of people got public speaking struggles. I don't like talking to big or big groups of people. Obviously, COVID makes it a bit easier because some things are restricted in certain parts of the world. But I think when I sat down and thought about it, it's like, well, you're trying to compare. You're not trying to show up and be the best version of yourself. Whereas now it's like I was ruthless and I went after like multiple ones. I dropped the ball a little bit because I missed the deadline for one of them, and I kind of went, what was it? It was 2nd of December as we were recording. The deadline was the end of November, and I thought yesterday, oh well, you made a little whoopsie. Yes, you'd have ideally like to have applied for that one. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. I didn't feel any remorse, any guilt. It's like, you didn't do it. Oh, it's an opportunity missed. However, here's your opportunity now. You need to go with both barrels tomorrow, and you know, showcase why you deserve it. So I think the meeting involves just talking about the topic and the theme. So it just bouncing ideas backwards and forwards. So if they say, no, we don't like this, can you tweak it a little bit? Okay, we'll it's not set in stone. I think by me doing it over a multitude of years, I was able to go back over what previously I wanted to talk about, and I can evolve it a little bit and give a little bit of a secret sauce, a little bit of sprinkle from this year, and kind of say, this is what I want to talk about, why I want to talk about it, and to give people where I'd be speaking at is the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts. So it's a dance theatre, and I can't think what else would fall under that. Obviously other art, I can't think of other arts, so that's very unpreparedness of me not thinking. But there's rapport between that and sport because it's competitive. So that was the narrative I'm going to bring in and kind of be, you're not supposed to be motivational or inspirational with TED, but I think they might give people leeway in 2020, 2021, maybe at a push 2022, because people need hope, have something to uplift them. Mine's probably showcases a little bit more of that, but it kind of shows every aspect of certain society needs to change, which is in essence of what that organization stands for. It's evolution of an idea to get people to provoke conversation and maybe a different way of thinking.
Now, you've been a multidisciplined sportsman, and I'm sure my listeners are really interested to know the journey. And let's go back to perhaps when your mother, Wendy, used to get you involved in sports as a little guy. What were some of the sports you first did when you were a little guy?
If we go right back, the first sport that I ever took part in is karate, and I was a naughty boy. The idea behind getting me involved in martial arts was to implement discipline. I didn't showcase that because I never got further than the white belt, so that shows a different side to me that a lot of people probably didn't see or didn't know. But I think in the long run, it's a lot of things I refer back to, because I think later on in high school, we were given the opportunity to do taekwondo as well. And speaking with the sense, I couldn't think what the word was the other day, and showcasing, well, how can we get round me having a prosthetic leg and having one leg? He thought of utilizing more of the upper body. So I had to do a, how would you call it? Showcase or showpiece. And I was one of the people selected to do it because it was different and it was using the upper body and showing like defense and attack using the upper body, and obviously punching and kicking, and I've got to block it. So not scripted, not choreographed. I think it was very much on the fly, and I take a lot from that. Is that person was very open to, okay, you're challenging me to do something different, and we're talking about 15 years ago, maybe 20 at a push. So he was probably well ahead of his time, because even then I looked down on Paralympic sport, on disability sport, because it wasn't in the mass media as it is now. It's probably more prevalent in the UK than probably anywhere else in the globe. Or maybe say on par with, I don't know about New Zealand, but maybe Australia or Canada, because they support their athletes as well as they do over here. And obviously America is probably still in the dark age when it comes to disability awareness, and very much pushing their Paralympic athletes as much as they do their Olympians. But obviously, I don't go for going on a tangent. That's the first course I did was martial arts, because my family was in the military, and there's a little bit of American influence on the installation where I spent, well, almost 20 years of my life. I did 10-pin bowling, and for them, that's very much a sport you get a college sports scholarship with. So I did that for, how many years did I do it in the end? From I think it was 10 until I was 13, and then I had to decide, is it going to be bowling or is it going to be swimming? And I couldn't do both because the competition side of it fell on the same day most of the time. If it wasn't in the swimming pool but the bowling alley, I had to choose. So I went with swimming, and then the rest is kind of history.
Well, let's talk about the history, because I just want to say though that not many kids get to make the decision between 10-pin bowling and swimming. That's quite an unusual combination, right? There's not many out there that I've heard of saying, well, I had to choose between 10-pin bowling and swimming. What was the gravitation towards swimming? What kind of tipped the scales in favour of swimming for you?
This comes down to what my mum thought. It was trying to find a sport that the disability couldn't be taken advantage of. So if you think any other team sport, be it American football, basketball, soccer, obviously for the Europeans, football, my disability would be a disadvantage. It would be something that it could be, even if I was in goal, my agility would be limited by the prosthetic limb. So it was trying to find a sport that wasn't the case, and it just happened to be that one. Up until the beginning of this year, I'd been doing wheelchair basketball for about 7-8 years. If I'd have known about that sport when I was younger, I would have probably gravitated towards that one. So, and I did find out later on when I did my research, and this is where the internet is very powerful, there was wheelchair basketball in Belgium where I grew up. So that would have been a very, very difficult decision to make. Whereas if it was 10-pin bowling, wheelchair basketball, which I love basketball anyway, and swimming, I may not even having this conversation because I've chosen a different path. The likelihood of making it into a national team with wheelchair basketball is probably more difficult, because it's, I would call it the blue ribbon event in Paralympic sport. Some people might disagree, especially the track athletes, but pretty much it's played worldwide, and it's one that everybody wants to tune in to watch because it's a little bit, if people have never seen it, it's like a mixture of chess, Crash Bandicoot, that's showing my age, and obviously basketball, because the court dimensions are the same, the height of the hoop is the same, the ball's the same, everything, all the rules are pretty much, except the contact ones on the chair. Everything is the same as the able-bodied game. So coming back to your original question of, yeah, it's quite unusual to pick between swimming and ten-ball bowling, but I think, and I read a great piece of content that somebody shared a couple of weeks ago with Kobe Bryant and his kids, because they'd got a fourth place trophy and they wanted to throw it away. He's like, no, put it somewhere that you can see it every single day. It reminds you of, you don't want to ever think that to ever happen again. And that, I think that exemplifies him as a character, because it reminds you as, well, in theory, those kind of trophies shouldn't exist because that's what's wrong with society. I've got loads of them hanging around because that's how American sport is to a certain extent. For kids, you get a trophy for participating.
Yeah, right.
I don't have anything extreme as that, but I've got fourth place, I've got fifth place, I've got sixth place.
So
They're
when
on
you
top of the trophy cabinet.
so
But
when you started off back and you chose swimming, did you have a role model in the kind of Paralympian world that you looked up to and kind of thought, hey, I want to be like that person? Was there
not
somebody
really.
that you kind of shine to? No?
Not really. I think, because if I come back to what I said, and I alluded to it a little bit, because it was only like an hour highlight reel of what is a 2-week competition, which is ridiculous when you think about it. No, not really. Probably as I progressed up, yes, because we've got some of the household names in the UK. So Tanya Thompson is synonymous in and outside the sport. She's an advocate for disability, period, to get a little bit more of, I'm trying to use my words, but not carefully, because it's something that I'm passionate about as well, of, just getting people the opportunity to be able to do what they enjoy. And it's just unfortunate that COVID has happened, because that's one of the part of the population that's being probably marginalized in certain countries, because I'm not going to say it's the same for obviously people in New Zealand or Australia, because in New Zealand they seem to have got a handle on it and were able to play rugby in front of packed out stadiums for a little bit. So they did manage to do something right. What that happened to be, who knows, because I think I'll give a little bit of reprieve to politicians. It doesn't matter what you do, you're always going to be wrong in certain people's eyes. But so I don't go off too much on a tangent, for me, it was more, my role models were in able-bodied sport, so it would be, it's not going to be the usual. I didn't like Michael Jordan when I was a kid. My kind of role models within basketball were Akeem Olajuwon, so the Dream. I'm very fortunate that I'm a little bit annoyed that we sold some of these jerseys, because some of these things would be collector's items, but you you learn in the long run, because I had his jersey when I was a kid. So that's, yes, it's a replica, but these are sought after items. Obviously Shaquille O'Neal, I'm trying to think, that's Patrick Ewing, and then within European football, I think my greatest role model was Ryan Giggs. Pretty much, he's a Manchester United legend. Played till he's in his early 40s. I obviously have to say it with a pinch of salt, because he was a naughty boy off the field with his brother's wife. That obviously I don't condone, but everything that he did on the field, I wanted to emulate my way. It just happened to when I read. I couldn't read all his autobiographies. You can tell it's ghost written because it didn't enthrall me. It didn't bring me in as much as I liked. But I learned about obviously him being mixed race. He doesn't look like it,
No.
except maybe for the curly hair, and then his father being black. So there's very much a synergy between my life. I'm a little bit more fortunate of where I grew up. I had a little bit more opportunities, but his mother was more in the picture than his father, and that's pretty much how my life was growing up. So it's, if I can have any morsel of his success financially, I know I've done something very, very well, but I think if I can impact more people on the inspirational, motivational side and actually transform and have a transformative effect on their life, my legacy is, I'll be happy with that.
So when you started off in swimming, did you have a goal to get to the Paralympics? Was that a goal you had in the early days, or was that something that evolved once you found out that you were pretty good at being in the pool?
It wasn't the thought as an 11-year-old. I know that would mean be like, if I said that, I shook my head, but that would maybe be lying, because I don't think it was never actually thought about until I was probably 15, when a coach made a comment of what's your thoughts about doing disability sport. I was not happy by that comment one bit. I was probably dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say. I'm thinking, 15 years old, all I've ever known is able-bodied sport or mainstream sport. I only see it maybe for an hour here every 4 years. I don't know. Did I even know anybody disabled at the time? Don't think I'd ever. I obviously come across disability people because I've got to go get my leg repaired. But you normally didn't see people your own age. It was always older people, older gentlemen, probably that fought in World War II, maybe at a push, and maybe a little bit younger than that. So it was never people of my age or younger. So I probably inadvertently looked down upon it as like, well, I'm in able-bodied sport. I'm pretty much able-bodied. If you look at me, obviously, if I had shorts on or was walking, you could tell there's something wrong. But most people assume something different when I'm wearing trousers. Like, oh, what, have you hurt your leg or something like that? So it's a little bit of funny ones when those conversations happen. But I wear more shorts nowadays, so it's I'm not afraid of it. I don't care what you're gonna ask me. You need to just fire away and get your answer. But coming back to your original question. No, it wasn't until probably a few months after that. So maybe like running into my 16th birthday, that thinking, well, this is a possibility, and I need to actually explain why. It was a meteoric rise from that conversation. So I did come home and speak to Mum about it. She said, "We'll run with it." We've had a discussion about it probably more recently when I've been an adult, and said, "Well, what was your thoughts really?" She was even more horrified than I was. She was fuming. So I think, yes, it is. It does take maybe sometimes having a maverick to just put the thoughts of, I won't say self-doubt, but in terms of it, not even the fear of God, but I'm trying to use the right words. It's something that had never crossed my mind. So it's like another opportunity and a door opening. So that person put their foot in the door and wedged it open. Well, might as well open and see what's behind what's behind that door. And within a space of probably 12 to 18 months, I'd made it's changed its words. It's now the performance pathway. Back in the days when I swam, it was, I know why they've changed it because it's politically incorrect, but it was the Teachers Swimming Disability Potential Program. So it's the last few words don't really come in. It's like, well, it's no, are you potentially disabled? Are you, but I think what it's trying to emphasize is you've got potential to make it to the next level. There's no guarantee or certainty that that's going to happen. For me, that didn't happen. But I obviously like to remind people. I had a conversation with my coach once I went to university, and we bumped into each other at my first games. He's like, "You've now fulfilled your potential that I saw that you had in swimming." I still have a debate with mum from time to time. Well, if you'd put in the same work rate ethic that you did and work rate in rowing that you had done in rowing into swimming, you might have made it. It's like, well, we don't know that, and I probably disagree because of the mainstays within medal potential. Swimming is up there, cycling is up there, and I'm going to forget somebody. Sailing is up there. So somebody I've forgotten. Athletics. Those are pretty much guaranteed certs that they're going to bring in a certain amount of medals to Paralympics GB and Channel 4. I like to share this every 4 years because it's funny. It kicks Olympic sport when it's down. So it's complete reversal of how I used to think as a teenager. Channel 4 did a ad campaign. I couldn't think of the words I wanted to use. And this actually came up the other day when I was talking to somebody because they reminded me. It was on every billboard up and down the country. Thank you for the warm-up. Now the real event starts. So it's taking it.
Really?
So how they actually took that, but Channel 4, because Paralympic, the IPC had to kind of say, well, we didn't condone that. We didn't tell them to do that. Channel 4 took but I guess it's trying to showcase, well, we're going to put disability sport front and center. And I was skeptical because pretty much you're used to competing in front of maybe 100 people, lots of friends and family in the run up to the pinnacle of your career. China was rent a crowd, as all the athletes like to call it now. It's a little joke inside for us, but my family had gone out to China as well. So my mum and my aunt went to see me compete, and they told me they marched in, sat down, and then marched back. It's like, I don't believe that. I had to see it for myself, and when I did, it's like, well, this is what's wrong with disabled sport and Paralympic sport, because if you're watching it on TV, the stadium's full. That's fake, because ultimately the Chinese are trying to pull people wool over people's eyes and say, well, we've supported the Olympic. It put into question whether or not the Olympic stadium was all full as well when the Olympics was on, if you think of it deeply. So I went in with a bias in the run up to London, and people were asking me how easy it would be to get tickets. I'm thinking pretty easy because of China. But in the run up towards, as closer we got to it, I was obviously not being harassed, but Facebook, text, people. I don't think it resorted to email because I don't think I gave that out, but people were saying, "Oh, I can't get tickets because through the lottery aspect of it." Like, okay, this thing is taking off, and we got to probably maybe within the last month or so, and I went on record, I think even with like press stuff, if you didn't know an athlete in some relation, be it you went to school with them, went to university, they happened to be a mate, citizen of your family,
you weren't
going to get a ticket.
Yeah.
So yeah. I was like mind blown. And when we came out for our first game in London, it was packed out. I'm thinking, ooh. So it hit me. I was the only member of the team who'd been to games before, and everybody was asking, well, what's it going to be like? Well, I don't know what it's going to be like, because not one games is the same. And it completely blew my expectations. It's somebody asked me recently on another podcast, if you had to pick one highlight of your career, I think that's not fair. That's hard. But I chose Beijing because it was the first one.
Yeah.
It was my I'd arrived front and center. It probably helped that it was away from peering eyes of the media, because that's a scrutiny that any athlete, they're going to build you up, and if you don't quite live up to those expectations, they're going to tear you a new one. And that's, it doesn't matter what media that is worldwide. They take great delight in
Yep.
pretty much destroying people, and no care, and obviously 2020 showcases that massively, as they've got an agenda to suit themselves. They don't necessarily care about the who they hurt. But I think London, sometimes it eclipses it, but it's trying to put it into words. I think I'm getting better at being able to do that, because it allowed, obviously, friends and family that maybe never seen me compete ever to be able to see me in person, and to give some perspective for people watching this and then listening to it as well. Our games were all sellouts. The medal rounds couldn't even do that. So that gives a perspective on the British public. It's like, well, Britain's not in it anymore. Nah, we don't like that sport no more. We'll go to the next one. But I'm looking at it from a positive, because it's like, well, we're going to support them to hell or high water. You don't happen to be in the running anymore. Okay, that's okay. Press didn't do that. The press, I think, after the tournaments, kind of got compared the men's and the women's team. It'd have been a little bit better if they'd done that during the tournament, because that was ammunition. Because it was, the men's finished 8th, the women's finished 8th. Should they really have got their place in the games?
How did it feel representing your country for the first time? Like when you got notified that you had become a member of the GB team, how was that feeling for you after all the work you'd put in to get there?
It's like a Christmas. It's like that's how it's like a Christmas and probably a birthday all put into one, because I still have that very first kit. This happens to be that I didn't make the Commonwealth team for Wales, and this is the reminder where it all started. This is Manchester in 2002. This is where my career kind of took off. So it's a reminder to me, as this I was given this by my performance director at Disability Sport Wales for doing a job well done. I can't remember what it was. I had to do a certain thing to tick a box, because that was my goal. I wanted can I get a piece of the memorabilia from what pretty much started my sporting career. But
what distances did you used to swim? What were your distances and discipline?
In swimming, I pretty much did everything everything multi-talented. The one that I made the national team was a breaststroker, but I think that almost derailed my career. And this is something a lot of people don't know. I was in and out of the pool a lot because I had a niggling knee injury, and obviously for breaststrokers they've got weird knees as it is, but I'm having to do that on one knee, and there's probably the other person probably has a little bit of remorse, a little bit, because they didn't believe me, because it was they thought of being a bit, James hasn't got all of it between the ears, he's not cut out to go to the next level. And I was on training camp at the time up in Manchester. And I got out of the bed one morning, went to hop, and the knee collapsed.
Oh, gosh.
Thinking, well, this isn't right. This isn't right.
Yeah.
I think we went to training, and then got out of the pool again. So, oh, we don't believe you, but we're going to take you to physio. The physio told me I was in with a space of like 3 to 6. It was like really, really short. I think a couple of weeks, and I may never walk again. There you go. I wasn't lying. That's even more severe than I thought it was going to be. I pretty much. Can I swear on the show?
Yeah, go for it.
I pretty much, almost fucked up my cruciate ligament. So we're talking probably something horrific, for the sake of sport. And did I ever? I don't think I ever brought it up with the individual. I think my face said it all, because well, here you go. I wasn't lying. Even I wasn't expecting that kind of comment from the physio. But I think I took it on board what he said. Well, we need to do the work. We need to strengthen it. And every time if it hurts a little bit, even though I'm now 20 years later, I do something about it. I do the work, go back and do, well, this needs strengthening, because I don't want to be able to put myself in that position again.
What was the transition from swimming to rowing? How did that come about in terms of, was it a simple case of I'm just sick of swimming, I want to do a different sport, or was there something else that happened?
Oh, that's a nice one. I was dropped.
Oh,
I
you
was
were
dropped
dropped.
from the national team.
Okay.
I was dropped because to give people some perspective on that, is you've got to earn your place every single year. What would you put it to? Very much like someone within a sales team, don't hit the quota, they could probably get sacked. It's probably something like that. And sports like it, people don't tell you that, but I know that's what it's like. If every year trying to earn a contract, it would probably be the similarity probably to NFL, because NBA have got long, unless you're very, very household name, you're only going to get a short-term deal. And Olympic and Paralympic sport is like that. You pretty much live and die by the sword. So if you don't perform, you might lose your funding. And for me, the writing was on the cards probably the year before, because I was pretty much close back in 2003. I just made the cut and just did enough to make it. And then because they base it on how would I describe it? Is a percentage of the world record based on your age, which is I think they still do this. And if they don't, it needs changing, because they do it by your age and then how well you should perform in relation to a world record. And I think people listening with me will agree with this. Once you make it to the final of a games, the other person doesn't give a crap how old you are.
Yeah, that's true.
You're ultimately good. If you're good enough to be in that position, it shouldn't matter. So I don't think age should be a factor as you're going to have this meteorical rise, because some people might flourish sooner, some people might flourish later in their careers. And who's to say that you can't chop and change? I think we're one of the best countries to do it in Wales. It's not got a big population, thus they try and reinvent the athlete. So I don't go off on a tangent. Was it just straightforward as just jumping from one to the other? I don't miss the training aspect of swimming one bit.
Yeah.
At all, because people ask, well, because I went for a phase that I wouldn't even go into a swimming pool up until about a couple of years ago. I don't know what that was all about, but the competition aspect I do miss. I've lived to massage the ego a little bit. It's like I like beating people. It didn't matter if I didn't beat my time, but that's what performance sport is. If you beat your time, that's nice. My swimming coach would disagree because he hates the athletics guys talking about season best. It's like, well, that's not good enough. You need to be beating your time all the time. And that's probably the mindset between swimming and athletics. It's like completely different. But with me, that transition was brought to me by my performance director, Anthony Hughes, who I want to get on my podcast because that would give a behind the scenes as, you know, the man that's actually created the beast, as he's pretty much, he challenged me for a decade to be better. It didn't matter what I think, be if I wanted recovery techniques. If I said no, he'd say, I don't care what you think you have in it. So he was like an extension of my family. It's like, I'm going to do whatever's best for you.
Yep.
And if he'd have known what happened in 2003 and not what happened in 2004, because he had a conversation with my mother, he'd have never let that happen. He's like, well, we're going to prepare you probably for that. And he'd approach me on the phone maybe a week's time. How long ago would it have been? Back in 2004, so nearly 16 years to the day. What's your thoughts about doing this, doing adaptive rowing, as it was called back then? It's like, well, never done rowing in my life. I've obviously seen it because of the boat race.
Yeah.
And
of course.
why my family support Cambridge over Oxford, I don't know. We've got a family member that did go to Cambridge, but it's through marriage. It might be just be the colour, because I've been to Oxford. I've competed against Oxford Uni, but in swimming. But obviously, I was like, well, I'm not quite sure. And these are probably the only times that I've had a little bit of self-doubt. Oh, let me pick up the phone and speak to my mum. And she doesn't think she said it needs. Well, this is how I remember it. Is you can be very, very good or absolutely useless. And for anybody outside of sport, that second sentiment would be quite catastrophic, because it's like, well, if I'm absolutely useless, it's not. I'm worthless. That never crossed my mind as I'm not going to be good enough to do it. I'll give it an attempt, because this stems back to probably my childhood of, even when it comes to eating, if you try it once, that's all I ask of you. And if you don't like it, that's okay. So be it, you know, Brussels sprouts or parsnips, I detested as a kid. I quite like them as an adult.
Right.
But it was the willingness to, you don't have to sit at the table until you eat all of them. It's, you have one, I'll give you one. If you don't like it, you've eaten it, that's fine. And I think that has epitomized my entire life. It's like, well, I'll give it a crack once. I never thought I'd pick it up as quickly as I did, because I was in the car park doing it on it's hard to describe. It's kind of, it's a cross between a rowing machine, but it's not quite entirely a boat on land. And was doing all the techniques. Oh, try this, pick it up, try that, progressed. What about going on the water? That was, I was thinking, not quite sure about that. I knew I was expecting of trying this on land. I don't know why I was fearful of the water, because I pretty much spent my entirety of my life inside it. So
yeah,
but that's a heated swimming pool, so it's falling into a river is a different story. That didn't happen until probably later in my career, but I think because I brought probably a smile to his face, he probably didn't think of wildest dreams. He's picked it up within a space of half an hour. I was like, well, okay, let's try it. He went out and I thoroughly enjoy it. And I think when people do say, well, what was your fondest memories? I would probably say rowing, because it's a sport that there's serenity, there's peace. You're away from everybody else on the water, and the sea. You see the seasons. It's probably like a sport unlike anything else, because you're pretty much engulfed into nature. If you happen to look up and take notice of your surroundings, that I did many a time, because swimming, I could say to any swimmer, well, if
It's the
you
black
really
line.
think about it, it's a black line. It doesn't matter where it is in the world.
Yep.
That line on the floor, at the bottom of the pool, or the one on the ceiling, if you're indoors, I do say, I'll take that with a pinch of salt, because for the Americans and the Australians, because they do swim outside as well, the swimming pools are all the same. It doesn't matter. That's the consistency between the sport. Whereas rowing, the weather has a factor into how you perform, and I think it's probably, I said I don't miss training aspects of swimming. There are aspects of the rowing training I do miss. There's some obviously, they make me sick to my stomach just thinking about them, but those are everybody athletic will know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter if it's lactic testing, sprints, nose to the wall. Everybody's pretty much been there. Some of those, I'd rather not think about it, that's probably just some of those are negative thoughts. I know it's part and parcel of the sport. That's why it was a part of the process. Whereas I think you've got me really thinking. It's like, well, I did soak up the process, because I'm talking about the environment, and I maybe don't give myself justice, because I talk about, like, just then, of the bad moments, because I have to do it anyway. Because if I don't do that, the gut wrenching, sickly training session, it doesn't really challenge me, because it's all well and good doing what rowing calls steady state. Like I can't remember what some sports it's aerobic training, and some have got like A1, A2 training. That's easy. That's just that's maintenance, and that's mileage. That's not really gonna push your boundaries to really, when it comes crunch time. The ones that are getting gold medals, they pretty much redline it. Not all the time, but they are willing to say to the brain, not today. I don't care what you think. You think we're putting our bodies in harm's way. Obviously we are, because there's no sane person would do that day in, day out, and then go back and take the same punishment again. But that's what I say to my clients. I can appreciate you don't want to go to the Paralympics or the Olympics, but I'm going to test you, because I know your resolve, and I do question people when they say, well, I know my physical capability. No, you don't. Because ultimately, if you knew your physical capability, you would be in my shoes. Yes, it is a choice, because people have questioned, well, would you do it again? Yeah, in a heartbeat. It's because I'm not going to say it was the best portion of my life, because that wouldn't really give everything else justice. Yes, it was nice to be able to travel the world. It's great to be able to speak to people from different countries, and you have a rapport. Because I was talking to a teammate before the second lockdown here in the UK. It's like, oh, life was so much simpler when we were athletes.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's like all you had to do is concentrate on yourself, and that was it. And I've had people probably try and tear me a new one. And one person said to me, "Oh, you were more of an inspiration and motivation as an athlete." I was like, "Okay, I hear you are, because I thought I know you." I'm saying, where are you going to go with this? But I don't agree, because of my point just before. I did that for me, maybe an extension for my family, maybe to put my town on the map, and then for the rest of the country. And I tell obviously the up and coming athletes, don't think about that last one, because that pretty much could crush you if you think about it. Of a spectator sport, you got 10,000 people in the arena. If you start thinking about those 10,000 people and what they're gonna think about you if you don't perform,
You're in trouble.
that's going to stop you in your tracks very, very quickly. So it is remembering that. I think I would probably put my family probably above me a little bit, because if it wasn't for their sacrifice initially, I'm not even putting that on that trajectory. And my mum's probably done a lot for my career, and she probably knows that, because we only spoke about this the other day. I've got the T-shirt now to remind me of that occasion in 2002, but she went out of her way. It was very embarrassing at the time, of to go down to the swimming, go to the very front of the barrier after the event had finished, and shout over the barrier, "Can I speak to a Welsh somebody from the Welsh delegation to a head coach, to be able to get James into position?" And this only because she couldn't face my grandmother and come home and not have done that. Right. And she put it down to luck. I said, that's not work. That's not luck. That's a work ethic. Because I wanted to kind of go, hide my head away and be, oh, this is embarrassing. It's like, but if she doesn't do that, and I do put it in my content sometimes, that head coach, because he was a different head coach when I went to made the team, he dined out on the after dinner speeches on that moment alone, because he said to me, you're not gonna make it because you didn't start at 8. I started at 11. I kind of said, I'm not going to follow that narrative, because that's plan A. It's all well and good for the people that started at 6, 7, 8. Good for them.
Yeah.
I'm going to prove you wrong. And ultimately, that's a motivational after dinner speech, because I wasn't going to take no for an answer. Mine is, I started at 11, so what?
Yep.
I'm going to prove that I can do it as well. And he's no longer with us, that coach, but it's kind of the epitome. It's like the opposite. I've done a plan B.
Fueled your fire, yeah, that's for sure. Tell us what happened in terms of the transition away from competitive sport. How difficult was it to retire, basically, and to start the next journey of your life?
It wasn't difficult, and I only say it was my choice. But I think on reflection, and I've gone soul searching with this, because I did not prepare for life after sport. It horrifies me to even think about it, because I was one of these people pointing fingers. The world owes me everything because of my sporting success, and I've spoken to other athletes about that. Theirs is probably their transition in sport, and they've been dropped, and they've sought solace, pity, you name it. I didn't do the work. I didn't speak to the right people. I didn't do, the career transition, which I'd done in sport 3-4 times. But it's a willingness to, the people. They think they know best. They know it all. I thought I could do it myself. I thought that I did the journey my lonesome. Yes, I had to do pretty much take my lumps. That's true. But I always had somebody in my corner. I always had an entourage, and I forgot about that. And that's what I like to remind people. It's good to have people that you trust.
Yep, absolutely.
But it's taken probably 3-4 years to realize that. It's a lot longer than people probably expect. But it didn't take that long to be able to think about that. Yesteryear, it was a quick conversation. Okay. You say what have you got to lose? Let's try it and see what happens. Whereas I think because it's the regular 9 to 5, I'd always wanted to never go there. It was, even family would say, like my aunt and uncle didn't really believe in my sporting career. They did once they got to see it up close and personal, but they were always, well, you can't make a living out of sport. But I kind of listened and didn't take notice. But I think when it came time to push to shove, when it coming into the real world, I wasn't quite prepared. It was, as one coach, Donny Boyvan, was saying, it's only, all it is you excelled in one pool, you're going into another pool. But I think because of societal biases of not liking competition and what sport stands for, I think as the athlete, you deem that you need to change to be able to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say now I would disagree with that, because I would say that's an advantage that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Of we seem to be able to get along, doesn't matter race, religion, beliefs. We all have a common goal to go out there and win. Where society seems to have a difficulty being able to swallow that, and 2020 has proven that. It's like every time there's something come up, this is an aspect that doesn't quite fit. Black Lives Matters, equality with women, disability. You're thinking, well, within sport, we don't seem to have a problem. There's probably some certain things under the surface that probably needs to be maybe talked about, and it is, and it's a perspective. It's like, well, I've never thought about that. Oh, that needs to change. But I think society likes to stick its nose into sport, but it won't take a little bit of what's like. Well, we'd like to, and I think the NBA showed that it's always told to stay in its lane. It's like, oh, this is a political matter. You go over there and entertain, and we don't really want to hear what you want to say. And ultimately, they went to the extreme as like, well, the Milwaukee Bucks decided not to play. I think if they'd have done it the whole league, that would have been a statement of intent. It's like, sport is not going to entertain you as it has done all the way back to before Jesus Christ. You know, the Roman Empire and the Greeks. You're gonna take we're gonna hit you where it hurts the most, in your wallet and below the belt.
Capacity,
we're not going to turn up, and we're going to make a statement because it needs changing.
Yeah.
And I've taken on board that kind of message. It's like, well, I'm listening in different people's perspectives on there's former New York Giant who's on the TV over here for the NFL one on the BBC, and he said I wouldn't kneel, and this is my reason why. I was like, okay, but obviously the media is going to jump on that because he's going to be the only one standing around, and forget about the 100 guys that are still doing their protests. He respects that. That's what they want to do, but he is obviously of African descent, Nigerian, moved to Britain for their family to improve their life, and then he obviously went to the US, the collegiate space, and then make the NFL. He's lived the American dream, so he can't really turn around and say,
yeah,
well, I want to bite the hand that fed me and turn my back on it.
Yeah,
because it's made him the person who he is. And I think I've taken probably aspects of both and blended it into my own. And I had an opportunity to speak to one of my alum university, the University of Chester, for Black History Month over here back in October. And they asked you who was your role model, how impactful has the month been for you? And the person asking the questions was obviously black himself, and but from Northern Ireland, and he didn't expect the answer I gave him, but I gave him not a political answer. I gave one from the heart. I come from pretty much a white household. I don't know what the blacks have to go to. I don't think I've ever faced racial prejudice in sport. I probably have to go pretty deep to find it, but whether or not it's between Wales and England racism that you know all too well with obviously the banter that you have with the Australians, that there's a little bit of niceties in there as well. Whether or not there's that kind of racism that I experienced in sport, that was a possibility. Where it came to race, I don't think so, or hope not. And I would hope that Britain's a little bit more ahead of the times of multiculturalism when it comes to that. But I think that's where I think sport's been a leveler for me, because where I grew up, multiculturalism was everywhere. So for me, it was normal. It was normal to see somebody that was the mother or father was Asian, the mother or father was black, the mother or father was white. The multiculturalism of having not multiple nationalities. I was in a melting pot, like to the extreme. So that's probably where mine has been shaped, because I don't know what the ghetto feels like, because I've been born into suburbia. And yes, that is comfort in one sense, because that's what's bad, because I get a little bit comfortable when I take my foot off the accelerator.
Yeah.
But when it was in the sporting world, it was, you get out of my way, I'm going to steamroll you, and I'm going to give you two options.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a doormat for anybody, because BBC did a documentary in the run up to Beijing on another chap, ex-forces, who lost his limbs in, I think it was Iraq. He didn't even get a look in. He didn't make it past the first trials. But did the BBC showcase that? No. But we probably, the other 3-4 guys going up for selection, probably took it personally. It's like, well, you think it's going to be as easy as walking in through a door to make the pinnacle of sport? You've got another thing coming.
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, which it does make me a little bit annoyed with myself, is why did I need an external motivator to kick me up the ass?
Yeah.
Because I'd only just come off making my first World Championships the year before. Why do you need a TV documentary to this time of the year? So people could probably relate to, I don't want to go exercise because it's cold, wet, and miserable. Okay, try and do that every single freaking day. But and you yes, you have a choice not to turn up, but they'll also show you the door. So I did have good teammates when I went volleyball. We kind of fed off each other, because he still is active duty. He's in the Gurkha Rifles. So you're talking about pretty much a guerrilla warfare killer if he wanted to cut your throat in the middle of the night. But we seem to get on like a house on fire, and if either of us having a bad day, it'd be, oh, come on, you're having a bad day today, but let's just try and do the best.
Yeah,
do the best that you can on that given day. And it was very much banter. I don't know why. We did have one of the Leicester Tigers come to one of our training sessions when we were up in Loughborough in the final preparations, and what the two of us did, we rocked up earlier to training, because there's one exercise that he wanted us to put more weight on. So that day came, it's like, oh, you guys gonna put some more weight? Oh no, we've already done that exercise before you came, because we pretty much got the meal ticket to London. I'm not going to overdo it and then get injured. because I'm not going to get this opportunity again. I know you've got the right intentions. This is now James as a coach talking. As an athlete, I saw what the other ones had intention. We're not doing more work than we have to because somebody else isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
But that's the epitome of the environment that player was in. You know, Leicester Tigers, probably when he was playing, were they almost got relegated last season, but they were a beast domestically and on the European stage when it came to rugby. So I was not in awe because he pretty much almost made the World Cup, but not made the team that won their only one. I think this is me as a Welshman, I like to kick people. Especially English, like you have lost 2 World Cup finals as well. You might be almost the best team in the world, but you've also lost 2 World Cup finals to the same team in South Africa. But they would probably turn around a lot of the English and say, well, Wales has never won a World Cup. Yes, but what happens if it had started in the 1970s? Because you're a Kiwi and they're pretty much, they should be winning every single World Cup just by not turning up, but if they get everything right, they're not number 1 in the world rankings for probably the first time in a long time. But they are the USA basketball, you know, the pretty much the epitome of the sport. Everybody wants to be the All Blacks, and be it, you know, because of their mindset, their team philosophy, right down to when they've done documentaries on it, and they put the who's worn the jersey above the nameplate. Remember who came before you, and I think every sport should do that because it's not your jersey, and rugby, bar the World Cup, it's a number. It's not your number, and you could lose it at any time. And I think this is where, you know, films have played a big part in my sport, and I might bring this into my podcast. It'd be interesting what impact films have had on other athletes. Of you know, when they talk of what the name on the front of the shirt is more important than the one on the back. I much took that to another level and epitomized that. I did 2 sports that, yes, the name on the front of the shirt is more important than the one on the back because you haven't got it. Rowing, it's not your name. I think the team kit, no, there's nothing on the back of it, but it's GB on across the chest. Swimming is on your cap. You do get a nameplate, but I didn't make it to the performance level, so I never got that. And it's not until volleyball that I had my name on the back of the shirt. But that was when I made the Paralympics. Everything before that, I've still got that kit as well. It's not my number. I think I was given the number 11 because our team manager was a Manchester United supporter as well, and Ryan Giggs wore the number 11. So I think it was, yes, the size fits me, but I think there might be some synergy between that. It's give you the 11. So for people that wondering why my social media handle is that, there's reference to my volleyball. That's the reference to the 11. I have wore a different jersey number with basketball.
Yeah, brilliant. James, unfortunately, we've rushed through our time today. I can't even believe that we've gone over time. But it's been fantastic listening to you because you've really embodied a spirit that's really, really obvious throughout your whole career. And I want to thank you for sharing that with us today because there's obviously so much more to learn. I'd like you to come back on the show at some stage in the future so we can continue that conversation.
I really appreciate that because I don't think I've ever not finished the conversation. It's like properly finished and people got it. Well, I want to hear more. It's normally curtailed off and we've got to at the end. It's never been.
Yeah, understand.
So that's I think from a conversational point of view, that's a good thing because it gets people
hungry for more.
I want James back on now.
Exactly. So we'll do that. We'll make a date for a future time and get you back, and we'll continue on that conversation. There's lots more to explore as well. So in the meantime, though, I really wanted to thank you very much, James, for coming on the show today and sharing what you have. It's great to see you as an ambassador for your sport in your different disciplines and really being a spokesperson as well. So I'm sure that a lot of people listening will be appreciating that today.
I appreciate that, Mark.
And we will see you again soon on the Global Sports Channel. James Owen Roberts, thanks for joining us.
I look forward to it. Thanks again.
There we are. That was James Owen Roberts speaking to me from North Wales today on the Global Sports Channel and telling us about his journey in the world of disabled sports and going from swimming to rowing and his appearances at both the Beijing and London Paralympics. A great guy, and obviously got lots and lots to talk about his wonderful journey, and I hope you were inspired by many of the things that James shared with us today. If you haven't checked out the Global Sports Channel before now, shame on you. You should have done that. Go over to our website, globalsportschannel.com. Check out all the great things that we've got there. We have a radio show. We have this interview show. We also do product reviews. And we have an opportunity for you to actually talk to international sports stars during our virtual Q&As. All there on the globalsportschannel.com. And we also have the YouTube channel where you can subscribe. Click the little bell and you'll be notified every time we drop a video. Well, that's it for this particular episode. I will be back again very shortly with another one. Until then, I wish you all a very happy, safe and prosperous week ahead. My name is Mark Philpott and I'll see you again soon.